Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Insurance Leadership Podcast. I'm Ryan Eaton, your host, and honored to have you listening in with us. Today we have Cabe Chadick, who has been in the business for almost 30 years helping insurance companies take products to market. Whether it's setting up reserves, helping with filings, actuarial, there's so many different things that come into place when you're helping get a product approved with a different department of insurance, and Cabe's got all the experience in the world for that. We are thrilled to have him with us today, and with that, let's go ahead and get started. Well, Cabe, welcome to the show, buddy. It's an honor to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Look, I was hoping to kind of get kicked off. I said, we got your bio on the website, and we'll have all the information there, but I'd love for you to give maybe a little information about yourself, what brought you into the business, and then maybe we can hit on Lewis and Ellis a little bit and kind of what services you guys provide and who comes to you. Maybe hit on that a little bit.
Sure. Well, I'm originally from Louisiana. Grew up in North Louisiana, went to LSU, got a math degree from LSU. My dad was a math professor. I did not want to teach for a number of reasons, and heard about this thing called actuarial work and got an internship with the Travelers Companies in Hartford, Connecticut by junior last summer of college. And they offered me a job to come back after college, spent 3 long years in the Yankee state of Connecticut, and came back south, and I've been here ever since. Spent a little bit of time in Louisiana with an insurance company. You're probably familiar with Penn American Life in New Orleans, but I've been here in North Texas with Lewis and Ellis for about 23 years. It's been a great ride.
I knew it. What type of clients do you service at Lewis and Ellis? Are you having mostly insurance companies, TPAs, government entities? Or do you kind of touch all of it?
It seems like I touch all of them. When I first came here to Lewis and Ellis, it was primarily small insurance companies and small health plans, and I still have them as clients. But ever since Obamacare came on the forefront, that's really ballooned the number of our government clients, especially state governments. And also the federal government, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, is my largest client. I help them with their Medicare program for seniors and their Medicaid program for our unfortunate poor citizens of the United States.
Wow, that's a big program right there.
It is.
Largest health program in the country, isn't it?
Definitely Medicare and Medicaid combined. It's massive. It's probably going to be covering half of our population here sometime soon.
Well, one question before we kind of hop into everything. What was it like going from Louisiana, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to Hartford, Connecticut? I know that had to be, that was a game changer for you, I'm sure, especially growing up in Louisiana.
Yeah, it was. My claim to fame at LSU was I think I was one of the last 30 students allowed to live in Tiger Stadium. So my last 2 years, I lived underneath the stands in Tiger Stadium. There was the cheapest place to live. There was no security. The fans could use our bathrooms. There was no air conditioning in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So I went from there to living in Hartford, Connecticut, it's fantastic. You don't need air conditioning.
That's right. No air conditioning in the South. That is dangerous.
Yeah.
Man.
I had a lot of fans. I gave up on, I took a lot of cold showers. Spent a lot of time in the library because it was cold there. But I enjoyed my time in Connecticut. It was a good training ground, but I was definitely a fish out of water. I mean, I would say stuff like, I'm fixing to do this, or y'all, and it was, so I got rid of some of my Louisiana speak, but not all of it.
Oh, man. Well, Cabe, look, you've been a partner of ours for years, helped us for over 20 years on our insurance company side, develop products, take products to market. And that's really, I wanted to get you here today because you have so much wisdom and you work with so many different companies and helping them take products to market. I'd like to hit on that, but I thought it might be fun if we started maybe with a story of, I know with 23 years of doing this, I know you've seen some different insurance companies kind of drop a ball or get a black eye in some form or fashion. Without naming any names, could you kind of walk us through maybe a process that you saw with a carrier where they kind of cut a corner, took a shortcut, whatever, and it didn't work out for them? I think that might help us kind of get into some of the questions today.
Sure. This is a common story. I've seen this a handful of times from my earliest consulting career. It's still going to happen because it's just human nature. You've got a small to medium-sized company that wants to grow their line, and they look at a big carrier that's been doing something. They've got some benefit package product, and they've got a certain rate and commission scale, and they're selling it like hotcakes. And they figure since they're a big company, They look at their bottom line in total. They know what they're doing. They're making money in bottom, their stockholders reports or otherwise. And they figured, I want to copy that just like them, Cabe, or otherwise. And we tell them you really can't follow them. In fact, I've even had a client tell me I want to do that when they want to copy another client of mine. Now, confidentially, I can't tell them what's going on with this other big client. But I know privately they're losing money.
Yeah, it's like you do not want to do that. But
and so as you probably have heard, they shadow price it. Exact same benefit, exact same price, unfortunately, exact same commissions. And yes, they more often than not, they sell a ton of it. But then they learn very early on, this big company was losing money as well. I'll get a phone call back saying, how are they doing this? We're losing our cert. I said, you're still assuming they're making money. So that's probably the worst thing I've seen. And it's going to keep happening. It's human nature. People assume others know what they're doing and are making money, and they follow them down that same path.
Would you, from a business standpoint, what would you obviously can't tell a company, hey, they're losing money, you don't want to go down this price. What lesson would you tell carriers, or what advice would you have for carriers who are looking to shadow price to maybe do some due diligence so they don't end up in the same spot as these carriers who shadow price and then end up with a bad loss ratio?
Well, I strive. Sometimes you can find publicly available information about how they're doing. There's more and more reporting requirements at states. And so if I can grab something out there through Google or through a state DOI website, then it's no longer confidential information. And I can say, hey, look at this. Look at how they're doing in this one particular snapshot. And that maybe open their eyes.
Yep.
Maybe.
So go to a DOI, go to AM Best, go to wherever you can, and maybe be able to find out that information prior to committing to the shadow pricing, so to say.
Yeah. But what's tough is some of those, like you mentioned AM Best, which is a great place, but if you're talking about a massive company, you're talking about hundreds of product lines all gathered together, so you really don't see it. So sometimes you have to do some esoteric searches and try to find just that particular product line. And the DOI website, sometimes there are some states, and Florida's one of them, maybe Tennessee, where you have to go back and tell the state, after you've been writing business in that state, how you're doing. Florida's a great one because you have to tell Florida most accident health products how you're doing in Florida and how you're doing nationwide. So that's my first go-to state. Now, as a client like yourselves, you hate reporting that information because then you're kind of sharing your dirty laundry or your good results with everybody. But that's a great place to go to.
Let's copy this and let's not copy this. Right. Now, that makes sense. So we're talking about filing of products there and with Florida. Does every Department of Insurance require you to file a product that's life and health? I mean, if you want to sell in Colorado, obviously you got to file a product there. Do all 50 states require that?
It's going to be, it depends. Let me go to the extremes. There are some exceptions, like you have some group non-major medical products that a state like Arizona, I think is one of them, that just trust companies that are licensed to do in that state. And you can just file it and be exempt and you're off to the races. Now, if they find something after the fact through a complaint or market conduct exam that you're not in compliance, then they'll have to go back and reverse that. So there are exceptions where you can just file and move along. And then there's other states that are close to that to where they don't put much into the review. They ask very little questions. But again, these are products that are not, say, senior citizen focused. They're not ACA or major medical focused. They don't get a lot of public pressure. Anything having to do with the senior citizen, MedSup, long-term care, Medicare Advantage, that gets an intense amount of focus. You're going to get a lot of questions. Anything having to do with ACA or major medical, you're going to get a lot of questions. But there's a lot of products, and your company does a ton of them, where you just don't get as much scrutiny.
That's right. No, that makes sense. I've never thought about that before. The senior products getting that much scrutiny makes perfect sense. Everyone wants to take care of that. It makes perfect sense.
These folks are on a fixed budget. It's not like they can go out and make more money or this or that, and they're purchasing products that intended, especially long-term care, to last for years. They made one big purchasing decision, and they need that for the rest of their life. That's a big decision. MedSup, fortunately, is an annual decision. You can change carriers, but senior products get a lot of focus, and I would say rightly so.
Does it also have to do, Cabe, with policies that have short tail risk or limited exposure? So, a $10,000 life policy or a final expense policy, it's not huge. It's not going to sink any company's ship. Does that also have something to do with that as well?
I would definitely say so. Yeah, the amount of the payout. I mean, major medical policies have millions of dollars, sometimes and often unlimited payout, as opposed to a limited benefit critical illness product that's $5,000 or some supplemental medical. Again, a $5,000 max payout. A DOI has only so many resources they can allocate to things, and they allocate it appropriately.
That makes sense. So when a company, you said you work with a lot of, especially at first, you worked with a lot of small and mid-sized companies. When these sized companies are bringing products to you, they have an idea for a product, they want to take it out, are they coming to you a lot of times with all the information that you need to kind of get the actuarial data? Do you have to guide them through the process? Are you asking them, hey, what size groups? Is this guaranteed issue, simplified issue, no health? I mean, what's kind of that process typically look like, kind of start to finish?
I would say most clients don't have all their ducks in a row. They really haven't. They have more often than again, they saw a competitor and they want to do this and this and they want to tweak this. But then they have, like you said, they haven't thought about their group sizes or their markets. And there's a lot of questions. I got to compliment Morgan White and your management. You guys have more products well thought out than anybody else. It's really nice. And then you have some clients who have 2/3 of the product design done, and this is especially for the larger ones. And then it has to go through committee, and they'll call me up and say, "Hey, can you do this right away?" And I was like, "Sure." And I'll clear my deck and say, "Let's get going." And now I got to go through committee, and it takes a year for them to make their product decisions, and if they ever get it done. It can be a frustrating process.
So you just took me down another rabbit trail I want to chase that you just said that I've never really thought of before. So when you're working with a large company and there's, maybe a new business committee and then there's a board, do you see that process slow down because the insurance company's having to, I got to go through this process, then this process, then this process. It sounds like it could be even a year process to get a new product even approved to go through filing. Is that what I'm hearing correct?
Absolutely. You've got more often than not, this makes sense. You got some sales VP that's heard the rumblings and the rumors. We need this to really complement. We need to improve our so-and-so. And so he or she, the sales VP, pushing. And so then it hits this brick wall with the actuaries, unfortunately, that are inside the company. And it just goes through committees. I remember one client, it took them like 6 months, and they finally had it down. But they had this one risk control committee. There was I don't know who made it up. It was like 3 or 4 individuals, and they shut the whole thing down.
So you mentioned something there as well, internal actuaries. Where do you see companies start adding internal actuaries? To me, kind of from my side of it, and this may just be outside looking in, but I don't know why a company would really want to necessarily have an internal actuary, maybe just looking at their stuff. To me, the value comes from having someone who's outside, who's seeing all these different companies and all these different products. But again, I may be missing something. I'd love to kind of get your opinion on that.
Well, once you reach a certain size, it really does make sense to have your own person. I mean, I'm really blessed to be compensated by my clients well, but I'm more expensive than an internal actuary. And so I actually and I keep my clients longer, and when I teach them certain things that they can do for themselves, I'm more than happy to do it. I love getting paid to do certain things, but if I can teach, especially if they're non-actuaries, I can teach you how to do certain things. I just don't want to, I appreciate the income, but let's develop a long-term relationship where you can take over certain things and let me just handle some of the more esoteric things. But on the actuarial side, maybe I can teach some of their staff to do things that we do 4 or 5 times during the year. And it's just a rote process. Why have us do it? We appreciate the income, but if for lack of a better word, our consulting bill gets too big, they're going to maybe fire. So I like to develop a long-term relationship. Let me have you take over some things internally.
So when you're getting to that point where the company has the resources maybe to be able to bring someone on, maybe help with filing or actuarial or whatever the case may be, what's kind of the first thing you start with letting that client take over? What's the first thing you see an insurance company typically saying, hey, I can bring this in-house, we feel comfortable with this? Where does that start?
It's a very boring area. It's setting your claim reserves. So every accident health block or all your policies, you have claim reserves. You report numbers on a quarterly basis. So you have to figure out, okay, at the end of this quarter, how much money do we need the bank to pay for claims that have already been incurred? We just haven't paid out the check yet. So it's a rote teachable process. It's not exciting, but something has to be done by an actuary.
Now that makes sense. So kind of going on, how do actuaries really come up with the rates at the end of the day? I know a lot of people think there's just some big book that people grab and look from and kind of pull that. And I know everybody's different. Walk us through that process, what it looks like, because obviously there's different products. Life and health are completely different. What does that look like, kind of putting all those rates together and then developing the reserves based off that?
Well, hopefully the client has some similar business to that. So, I mean, if it's a client like Morgan White and you're just tweaking existing product, we can kind of look and say, okay, that's really going to change the rates 1%. We don't expect that much change. So that's easy. On the other end of the scale, if it's a new product, which is a rare thing that I haven't seen it before, we can't find a comparable product out there in the market, then quite frankly, we have to wet our finger and stick it in the air. I mean, I've actually done that. So that doesn't happen too often, but we have to do that sometimes. And when we do that, we earn our reputation as being very conservative. We may load that rate a dramatic amount, because you can always lower a rate, especially if you're not making sales. But it's really tough to get behind the 8 ball and go back to these clients you sold and say, hey, we need to raise your rates.
That's right. No, I agree with you 100% there. So you and I both have a friend and clients that we worked together with that developed a new product last year. And without saying anything about it, it was a really unique product, completely new to market. I'd never even seen it or even thought of it really before. And I think COVID was one of the things that kind of brought it about. Was that kind of one of the new products that hey, I think this works, let's go a little bit higher? Is that kind of...
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, we loaded those rates dramatically. And like you said, I'm so excited about it to see its launch. So yes, we'll see what happens.
No, that makes sense. Well, look, let me ask you some business advice now, kind of getting closer to the end of the podcast. You've been with Lewis and Ellis for almost 25 years. What's the most valuable business lesson you've learned with working with all these different carriers and companies? What's something that you've seen that's just like, man, this is a tried and true business lesson I've seen over and over again?
I thought about that question. I would say, one, tell the truth, even if it hurts you or the recipient. Don't let fear stop you. I've seen so many clients, especially as you get bigger, they get really risk averse. Don't let fear stop you. And then also, I'm a believer in speed. You got to move fast. I love working with the smaller and mid-sized, especially the small ones. They move incredibly fast, and they have to. It's one of their competitive advantages compared to the bigger companies. So the other one is don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just don't repeat them.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. So kind of in the same line of questions, I'm thinking, what are some common threads, some consistencies that you've seen in organizations year after year that continue to be successful? What do you see among those different companies? Like, hey, here's the common thread to their success.
They move quickly. They make decisions very, very quickly, and they can respond to the market accordingly, as opposed to the story I told before where they take months if they ever make a decision. The companies that are successful don't chase what I call commoditized products. And let me explain what I mean by that. Is a lot of the ACA programs you see out there, the federal government and the states have largely tried to make everybody sell an orange, and you got to sell the same orange, and you're just competing on price. That's a commodity product. And you really have to be a big boy to keep your prices, your admin expenses low, and just go after that. And so that's a dangerous game. Some people can play it well. Health cares of the world can play that game. But I would suggest for most people, you don't want to play selling a market that's commoditized, where it's all the benefits are the same. There's no unique market. It's just you're competing on price. That's a really tough market. And my more successful clients stay way away from that, unless they can compete in that ball game, that very large scale bargain.
Right. Yeah. I think of commoditized products, and Medicare supplements are one of the things to me that is just it's price and financial stability, right? Those are the two things that the client's looking for when they're choosing. And if you look at it, it's all big boys in that game, right? The Mutual of Omaha's and all the other ones that are out there that are huge. So that makes a lot of sense. Look, hey, last question for you here, Cabe. This was one that we actually got in that I thought would be interesting for today. And so you've seen a lot of companies, you've seen a lot of departments of insurance. What's the most common issue you've seen with departments of insurance and insurance companies? And then what business advice would you kind of suggest to people that are running into these issues over and over again?
Oh, man.
And I'm sure it's different from state to state, right? But what's the most common one?
State, set your reserves. Don't get behind in reserves, because then all of a sudden you got a DOI knocking on your door. If you don't do something above board compliance-wide, admit it and move on. I mean, just correct your mistakes. It kind of goes back to that. Tell the truth, even if it hurts you, the recipient, and correct your mistakes quickly. And that gains your reputation among the DOIs. They'll remember that.
No, that's good. Have you seen situations where companies try to work their way around it instead of admitting their mistakes? They try to work their way around it and kind of not necessarily fib, but kind of beat around the bush to kind of get through situations?
Unfortunately so, yes.
How does that end up most of the time?
You fudge a little bit one year, and then all of a sudden, and you're hoping that it'll turn around. And it's almost like, okay, I bet on black on the crap table, this and that, and I'll get my money back. I'll double down. And all of a sudden now you're pulling back in your pocket. And now you got to fudge it a little bit more the next year. And now you're really, it's not just, now you're not in the gray area. Now you're definitely over the line. So it's just, it catches up with you.
That snowball gets to rolling, doesn't it? It gets a little bigger. Well, Cabe, that wraps it up for today, buddy. I can't tell you how much we appreciate you being on the show today. I got to be honest, when we talk about actuarial work, and I felt the same way on technology, it's kind of such a detailed subject. You're like, oh man, how are we going to get this really interesting? But it's such a critical piece of the market. Your information has been fantastic, man. So I can't thank you enough for being on there, and thank you again for our partnership for over 20 years now. It's just been a blessing to our organization.
Same here, Ryan. It's been a blessing to us, too. I appreciate it very much for the opportunity.
Man, thanks, Cabe. Appreciate you, buddy. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Insurance Leadership Podcast. We have more information about Cabe on our website, www.insuranceleadershippodcast.com. You can find out more about him and other speakers that we've had on the show there. It would help us greatly if you would like, share, subscribe on whatever listening platform that you listen in on. And remember that a good plan today is better than a great plan months from now. Thank you very much.